Girdvaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janaballabha Girdvaradhari Gopi Janaballabha Girdvaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Musabhadradjakacharya Statatasata Shisrimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Musabhadradjakacharya Statatasata Shisrimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 31, The Movements of the Living Entities, Text 47. Tasmanakaya santraso nakarpanyam nasambramaha buddhva jiva gatim dhiro mukta sangash chared eha tasmanakarya santraso nakarpanyam nasambramaha buddhva jiva gatim dhiro mukta sangash chareha tasmanakarya santraso nakarpanyam nasambramaha buddhva jiva gatim dhiro mukta sangash chareha. Vaishnavis. Tasmat, on account of death, na, not, karya, should be done, santrasa, horror, na, not, karpanyam, miserliness, na, not, sambhrama, eagerness for material gain, buddha, realizing, jiva gatim, the true nature of the living entity, dhira, steadfast, mukta sangha, free from attachment, charet, one should move about, iha, in this world. Translation. Therefore, one should not view death with horror, nor have recourse to defining the body as soul. nor give way to exaggeration in enjoying the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of the living entity, one should move about in the world free from attachment and steadfast in purpose. Purport. A sane person who has understood the philosophy of life and death is very upset upon hearing of the horrible, hellish condition of life in the womb of the mother or outside of the mother. But one has to make a solution to the problems of life. A sane man should understand the miserable condition of this material body. Without being unnecessarily upset, he should try to find out if there is a remedy. The remedial measures can be understood when one associates with persons who are liberated. It must be understood who is actually liberated. The liberated person is described in Bhagavad Gita, one who engages in uninterrupted devotional service to the Lord, having surpassed the stringent laws of material nature, is understood to be situated in Brahman. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is beyond the material creation. It is admitted even by impersonalists like Shankaracharya that Narayan is transcendental to this material creation. As such, when one actually engages in the service of the Lord in various forms, either Narayan or Radha Krishna or Sita Ram, he is understood to be on the platform of liberation. The Bhagavatam also confirms that liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position. Since the living entity is eternally the servant of the Supreme Lord, when one seriously and sincerely engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is situated in the position of liberation. One should try to associate with a liberated person, and then the problems of life, namely birth and death, can be solved. While discharging devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, one should not be miserly. He should not unnecessarily show that he has renounced this world. Actually, renunciation is not possible. If one renounces his palatial building and goes to the forest, there's actually no renunciation. For the palatial building is the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the forest is also the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If he changes from one property to another, that doesn't mean that he renounces. He was never the proprietor of either the palace or the forest. Renunciation necessitates renouncing the false understanding that one can lord it over material nature. When one renounces this false attitude and renounces the puffed up position that he is also God, that is real renunciation. Otherwise, there is no meaning of renunciation. Rupa Goswami advises that if one renounces anything which could be applied in the service of the Lord and does not use it for that purpose, that is called Pogu Vairagya, insufficient or false renunciation. Everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, everything can be engaged in the service of the Lord. Nothing should be used for one's sense gratification. That is real renunciation. Nor should one unnecessarily increase the necessities of the body. We should be satisfied with whatever is offered and supplied by Krishna without much personal endeavor. We should spend our time executing devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That is the solution to the problem of life and death. Translation again. Therefore, one should not view death with horror, nor have recourse to defining the body as soul, nor give way to exaggeration in enjoying the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of the living entity, one should move about in the world free from attachment and steadfast in purpose. Om Agana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitang Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This chapter is entitled The Movements of the Living Entities, and this verse is continuing a discussion about our movements. Sangas Chadet Iha. One should move about in this world. Well, everyone has to make movements. As Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, Nahi kaschit chanamapi jatutishtat yakamakrit. No one can stop movement, even for a moment. The gross physical body, as you know, is active. You can watch the kids run around here. They're active, they're moving. But even though the adults are sitting in one place, their minds are moving. So this topic of the movements of living entities is very important. And movements doesn't simply mean shifting from one house to another, one city to another. Movement means shifting through the bodily phases. What do we go through by identifying with the body and subjecting ourselves to its change of phases? So this education is what Lord Kapila Dev is trying to give. You're unnecessarily going through these material movements and suffering. You can stop these artificial movements by engaging in devotional service. If you are seriously and sincerely engaged fully in devotional service, you are liberated. So we should all be anxious for sincere, serious, and full engagement in the Lord's service. Because then you are on the platform of liberation, whether you know it or not. Of course, when we somehow or other interrupt our service, interrupt our full engagement of sincerity and seriousness, then the liberation, we step off that platform, so to speak. But let us not underestimate the full potency of devotional service. If we take it fully and seriously, then we are indeed liberated. The whole goal is to keep that liberated status by continuing to engage in Krishna's service. You may have heard Srila Prabhupada's quip about Ratha Yatra, especially during this time when we're having, I think, 9 Ratha Yatras here. So devotees said, well, we've heard that in the Shastra it is said that anyone who watches the Rath cart go by is liberated. So what's going on? So many people are seeing the Rath cart go by, but it doesn't look like there has been a major transformation in their life. As far as we can see, they're going on in the same way. So Srila Prabhupada responded that yes, watching the Rath cart go by gives them liberation. But what do they do after the cart goes by? If they plunge back into sinful activity, then what is the use of there's no possibility of any major transformation occurring as of yet in their life. Of course, they achieve indiscernible credit in their transcendental bank account for seeing the Rath cart of Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra go by. But in terms of transformation right then and there, because after the Rath cart goes by, their activities don't change. They don't refrain from material activities. They don't engage in devotional service. Therefore, the liberation status evaporates, so to speak. How do we handle this information Kapila Dev is giving us about death and then birth? We've discussed a little bit about this problem before. Who likes doomsday talk? No, everyone likes to hear that their prospects in life are expansive, exciting, that there's no glass ceiling above your head. You can be all that you can be. You're going to have an exciting life. Yes, there'll be some problems, but you'll push through somehow. When I'm speaking at outreach events, I often explain the different conception of happiness when you are young and when you are old. When you are young, in your teens, any teenagers here besides Namu Adurya? When you're in your teens, in your 20s and 30s, what is your conception of happiness? For the most part, it's all about awesome experiences, unprecedented, scintillating, unusual experiences. So many of our devotees here from overseas, they came to New Zealand on a quest for awesome experiences. They wanted the Kiwi experience, green New Zealand. One devotee, Bhakta Lenny, was telling us last night at the loft how, yes, he had saved up his money and got on the plane from Germany, come all the way to New Zealand for the experience, nature, the girls, the parties, the intoxication, the whole works. And then 5 days after he landed, he meets a devotee on Queen Street. That was the end of his mundane Kiwi experience. So when you're in that age group, teens, 20s, 30s, those of you who have children, you'll see them deal with this conception that you got to do something exciting. Often young people, especially in the towns in New Zealand, they complain. It's not exciting. Yes, there's stunning natural beauty all around, but our minds are just driving us crazy. Our mind wants something unusual, something awesome. They always use that Mahavakya, that key, like a Vedic mantra, like a Hum Brahmasmi or something. Awesome. And the parents are trying to figure it out. Well, look, you got to think about your future. You got to be responsible. And no, they want just something awesome, something right now that's just, wow, sensational in all aspects of the word. And they think they're going to be that way all their life. They look at the old people, they can't understand them. What's wrong with these old people? Just like the little kids. The little boy there, he's got his toys. He can't understand why adults don't play with toys. What's wrong? Why don't they have toy trucks? I may have mentioned before how sometimes when householders come to see me, the kids bring their toys, and often the kids try to give me their toys, like, this is the greatest gift. Here, I'm giving you my toy truck. This is from my heart. This is the most valuable thing in life. And so, upon receiving it, I have to get into it. Oh, a toy truck. Everyone needs a toy truck. So that doesn't end when you're in your teens, your 20s. You think you know it. You think you know how to be happy. You think you know what a good time is. And you can't figure out, what do these old people do? What? Back in the countercultural days of the 60s, for those who are into that phase, and most ISKCON devotees in the 60s and 70s, they were from the countercultural phenomenon. And so there was the famous slogan they all had, never trust anyone over 30. But they never figured out that one day they'd be over 30. So what happens as you get older? You all are noticing that. You try to become contented from the ordinary things in life. Seeing the sunrise and the sunset, seeing the children grow, and then seeing the grandchildren grow. But the young people can't figure it out. They think, like, where's your thrill? Where's the thrill on the hill? What are you doing? They watch the grandparents being content just watching their grandchildren at a playground. So the young people think, there's nothing awesome in this. Is this what my life is going to end up being? If that's the case, I've got to enjoy as much as possible right now. So these are the movements of the living entities. Because the body changes, your concept of happiness and contentment also changes. This verse is helping us to deal with doom. So the question is always there in not only talking to the outside audience, but even talking to our own devotees. How much should our education stress doom? The body is a vehicle of doom, but we don't want to think that. We want to feel that our body, even in old age, offers us possibilities. Someone sent me some video clips on YouTube of patients from COVID about to give up their bodies, and they're in the hospital, and the medical staff is telling them, you're not going to make it. You should get on the phone now and talk to your family. And these patients are saying, no, that's not possible. It's not possible that I'm going to die. It's just not going to happen. And the hospital staff is pleading with them. You don't have much time left. Get on the phone and call your family. I don't believe that this is the end. No, these things don't happen to me. Do you understand? They're telling the doctors. These things do not happen to me. So how much in bhakti do we focus on this? After all, Lord Kapila Dev is presenting this information. But even it can seem our own devotees want to hear simply positive messages. You can do it. The future is in your hands. But Bhagavatam is both pessimistic and optimistic. It's both positive and negative. It presents the realities of material existence. unless we hear about those realities of material existence, we'll quickly forget. So easily do we forget. And we underestimate the whole power of the elusive energy that forms the environment we're operating in. We forget so easily. We're constantly bombarded. Our mind and body is under constant assault by the external energy. And then still we wonder, why do I have to hear this every day? About the horrors of birth, the horrors of death. We know what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Doshanu Darshanam. One who is actually intelligent sees the fault, the dosha in material existence. But, okay, we learned that when we were brand new devotees. Now, we just want to be successful in bhakti and successful in the material world all at once. Or we just say, look, I'm tired of hearing this negative stuff. How the material world is a bad place. Well, Krishna happens to say what in Bhagavad Gita? Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. The material world's a temporary and miserable place. Anityam asukam lokam. Again, Krishna repeats that in Bhagavad Gita. So what to do? A balance is necessary. You can't get rid of the doomsday talk because the body is doomed. And that doom doesn't have to wait until you're 60 or 70 or 80 or 90. The most bewildering thing for people is when a young person undergoes doom. A person with a young body hits the wall, the end. This is considered a tragedy. The conception is that this young person had a full life ahead of him or her. I remember as a little boy in New York, I would read the newspaper, even though I was 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old. And I would never forget reading one news article about, this is back in the time when everyone got married. It was expected. You go to high school, you have a high school sweetheart, and then when you're 18 or 19, latest 20 years old, you marry your high school sweetheart. That was life in the 50s. Forget it now. So, there was to be this marriage, nothing unusual at that time. The girl was 18, guy was about 20. And all the wedding arrangements were made. Church wedding, of course. And then followed by reception. And the gifts were already given. I think that was the way it was done back then. Before the actual wedding ceremony, the people give wedding gifts like the night before, the 2 days before, whatever. And so it was the night before the wedding, the great event of this girl's life. And her man was there helping her family make the last wedding arrangements the night before the grand event. And then he left and to drive back to his house for his last night alone. And on the way home, he fell asleep at the wheel, and that was the end of him. So I was just an 8-year-old guy, and I was a little boy, and I was wondering, what kind of world is this? What's this girl going through? From the height of jubilation, oh, this will be forever, this will be wonderful. Because this was in the 50s, there's nothing else to do back then except get married, work a job, have children, and they'll do the same thing. That is until the 60s hit. Then everything went haywire. So just think what this girl was going through at 18. Could you have handled such a situation? from glory and exaltation to the biggest disaster of life. So even though I was just a little kid, I was wondering about this. What kind of world is this? How does she feel? She must be just crushed into powder. And then where does the guy go? Of course, coming in a Christian family, I naturally thought, well, did he believe in Jesus? Probably did. Everyone believed in Jesus back then, so I guess Jesus knows where he goes. I thought that story was bad. But then in Sydney, I got Brother Pratapana Prabhu told me another one. But it didn't involve someone so young, but still massive expectations of now we're going to live happily ever after. The son of the richest guy in Australia at the time, or one of the richest guys in Australia, who had just born with a silver spoon in his mouth. And he finally decided to marry. He was in his early 20s. The girl was in the early 20s. And it was like the talk of the town, big socialites, super wealthy. People are fascinated by opulence. But when you present Krishna's opulence, they say mythological. But meanwhile, some puny human being who has some wealth, people are, what's he doing? What's his house look like? What kind of car does he drive? So there was the marriage. Grand social event in Sydney. Mega event. Media coverage, everything. And the wedding was over. They made it through the wedding okay. And then they got into their car, their fancy Jaguar, to drive to their honeymoon. And she's driving. The bride is driving. And she fell asleep at the wheel. And there was a huge accident right after the wedding. She survived with just a broken arm. But what happened to her husband of 2 hours? He woke up in the hospital, paralyzed completely. How do you pronounce that word? Quadriplegic, yes. Completely paralyzed from the neck down. What do you think happened next? His wife of 2 hours before the accident came to visit him, and just while he's laying there paralyzed from the neck down, and just told him point blank, I didn't sign up for this kind of life. It's over. Now, many people would say, well, what do you expect, she didn't sign up for that. She thought she's going to live happily ever after with a fully functioning human being, a fully functioning male. And now the guy's paralyzed from the neck down. Okay, they just got married a few hours ago, but it's true. Ladies, can you sympathize? Guruvani's shaking her head. No way. What does Parthasarathi say? Sympathy? They don't want to say. Well, what would you do if it happened to you? What do you say, Nama Madhurya? Sympathy? Huh? What do the guys say? Madan Gopal, what do you say? Huh?
It's easy to say from the Krishna conscious perspective, but if you don't have Krishna conscious, then your whole life is based on sense enjoyment.
So he's saying it's to see it, the situation from a Krishna conscious point of view makes it, you can still function. But otherwise, if you're a mundaner, basically your whole life is finished. You go from the top of enjoyment and fulfillment, and the present is fantastic, the past has been fantastic, the future looks fantastic, everything is awesome, and then complete devastation. So that was the end of the relationship. I guess you would approve, and according to current contemporary vision, she was honest, right? What do you say, Jiva Shakti? She was honest, right?
Still pretty tough.
Huh?
It's still a bit rough.
Well, think, you're getting up in your years. You got to think like, you're in your 20s, you know? What's she supposed to do with a guy who's paralyzed from the neck down? She's not going to be a nurse all her life. Of course, they're wealthy enough that she can hire, so many caregivers, but still. You go from the high society social life, razzle-dazzle, night clubbing, traveling to Bali, to Putty, and driving around in your Jaguar, and then, what is this? These things do happen. So the Bhagavatam is giving us a balanced view, but we're prejudiced against that balanced view. We want to live happily ever after. And we tell ourselves, I don't mind dying if it's after 70 or 80 years, then it'll be all right. But it's never all right. When you're attached to the body, you never want to give it up. So what happens at the time of death to those who are bodily attached? You just heard that information given so graphically by Lord Kapila-Dev. You are attached to your material body, but you're ripped out of it. As the body becomes so painful that you can't take it anymore, in spite of your being so attached to it. This is like total mental breakdown. You're attached to the body because that's all you know. At the same time, it's so painful. You can't take it anymore. So this is what's going on inside the consciousness amidst a so-called peaceful death. You don't see all that. Oh, the person just passed away into sleep. Often, people say about when they're asked, what kind of departure from this world would you like? What kind of death would you like? Let me just go to sleep and not wake up. So this is how it looks from the external point of view. But what's actually going on? What is the living entity going through? It's the most excruciating pain because of the attachment. Especially a lifetime of attachment to sensuality makes the pains of old age worse, and also the pain of death even more excruciating. So you see, when persons are young, they're cavorting in sensuality. What else is there to do? I mean, it's just what life is all about. But you get of course, you're suffering right then and there. But that's not all of the suffering due to you, what you're experiencing at the moment. The barrenness, the aloneness, the realization that this is all that there is to material existence. You think you've had your fun, but you feel so exposed, so barren, so empty, but there's nothing else to do. But that's not the end of it. That mental suffering is not the end. Because of indulgences when you're young, that means your old age and your death are even more painful. What goes around comes around. Everything has a reaction. So therefore, you practically go insane at the time of death. But people don't see that because they're just looking at the external. well, he or she looks okay, just pump in more morphine and it's all fine. When you gotta go, you gotta go. No, you don't see the terror inside, the total helplessness. Because you're completely attached to the body, that's all you know. The only example that comes to my mind is these children when they want to do something and they have a toy and you try to take away the toy from the child and the child practically goes berserk because that's all the child knows. So similarly, this body is an instrument. If it's all you know, you're going to go berserk about relinquishing it. Even though you're feeling all this pain, horrible pain, where do you go next? You don't know. You didn't care. You thought the universe would sort it all out for you. Actually, in more ways than one, the universe is sorting it out for you. But you don't have a clue what's going on or why. So the devotee feels compassion for those suffering in this ignorance and wants to do something about it. To do something about it, you have to give this information. And it's always a challenge how to present these realities of birth and death in a way that motivates the hearer to do something about it. So that's the instruction that Srila Prabhupada is giving in this purport. That a sane person who has understood the philosophy of life and death is very upset upon hearing of the horrible, hellish condition of life in the womb of the mother or outside of the womb. You'd have thought he would just said inside the womb, but no. Outside the womb also. A sane person is very upset. At the same time, the purport is cautioning us, don't become so disorientated by being upset that you neglect to think about a solution. The Bhagavatam is very solution-orientated. This solution orientation is one of the things that distinguishes, if you want to say, Indian philosophy from Western philosophy. Vedic philosophy is very solution-orientated. How are you going to get out of illusion? Whereas Western philosophy, that's considered religious. So therefore, Vedic philosophy is rarely taught in philosophy departments. It's usually taught in departments of religion because of that focus on mukti, freedom from material existence, which Westerners think is a religious belief. Whereas absorption in sense gratification in the body, that's Siddhanta, that's rationality, that's not religion. Of course, we recognize that to be totally blind faith. So this is what goes on in academia. Because Indian philosophy, or call it Vedic philosophy, always focuses, whether you're an impersonalist or a personalist, everything always focuses on how to become free from the miseries of material existence. Solution. Whereas Western philosophy gets into so many tangents and loop-de-loops up, down, and all around. And therefore, that is considered real philosophy. But as soon as you say, how are you going to solve the problem of repeated birth and death? Whoop, into the religious department. So we're getting some crucial advice here. One has to make a solution. And it's easy to see a solution when you associate with those who are solving the whole problem, those who are liberated. And we're carefully informed that the liberated person is someone who is fully engaged in devotional service. We should try to associate with those kind of persons. And then the solution to the problems of life will be clear. So we have to have both things. The doomsday, because the body is doomed. Just think, if you're a teenager, you don't want to hear that your body is doomed. Are you still a teenager? No. You're in your 20s, right? Yes, you. Oh, she's a teenager? Early 20s, right? And you're in your early 20s, right? Or mid-20s? Okay. You don't want to hear your body is doomed, do you? You want to hear that you have so many possibilities ahead of you, awesome experiences, meeting the right person, establishing a family, having children who love you and think you're the all in all. But doom? Oh, you don't want to hear that. But the body is doomed. And that's the reality. So Bhagavatam is telling you, all right, you're a walking doomsday machine, but what are you going to do about it? How are you going to solve the situation? And, oh, but I'm busy. I'll deal with that when I'm an old person. It's hard to deal with it when you're an old person. You're already petrified, fossilized. It's easier to deal with it when you're young. That was always Prabhupada's answer when persons would ask him, well, how come it looks like mostly the devotees are young? He said, because when you're old, you're just so fixed in your mindset and your behavior, it's very difficult to change. There are always exceptions, of course. You look at Mathura Mandal. He was able to make a change in course. But that's not common. So, in other words, you better take Prahlad Maharaj's advice. Komara acharet pragyo dharman bhagavatanaha. As young as possible, make the change. Prahlad Maharaj totally kicks out this notion that save your endeavor for spiritual development until you're old. He says, no, as young as possible. But to do that when you're young takes strong association because you're battling against a massive ocean of material influence, the so-called awesomeness. It's a tsunami. Therefore, association is so important. Association of those who are fully engaged, seriously and sincerely engaged in devotional service. Speaking about solution, today we're celebrating the disappearance day of Gadadhar Das, associate of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Not the Gadadhar in Pancha Tattva Mantra, Gadadhar Pandit, no, but Gadadhar Das. And he's, the Acharyas describe, the effulgence of Srimati Radharani combined with one of Balaram's dear gopis, Purnananda. He's an associate of both Gauranga and Nityananda. Usually the associates of Gauranga are in Madhurya Ras, and the associates of Nityananda are in Sakya Ras, fraternal Ras. But Gadadhar Das goes both ways in terms of his association. He associates with both Gauranga and he's part of the inside group of Nityananda, even though he's the effulgence of Srimati Radharani combined with Purnananda Gopi. So he was sent to Bengal along with Nityananda and others to preach. Remember in Puri, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dispatched Nityananda to go preach in Bengal. He said, don't come and see me every year. You can do something even I can't do. You can spread bhakti to the lowest of persons. So you do that. No need for you to come to Puri every year. Of course, Nityananda came anyway. He's avadut. Materially unpredictable. So when he did go, though, even though he returned for visits, when he did go, Gadadhar Das was with him. But Gadadhar Das, although he's hanging out with Nityananda and the Cowherd Boys gang, his Gopi Baba would sometimes just emerge in the most ecstatic way. He would just pick up a pot of Ganges water, put the pot on his head like a cowherd girl and start dancing and say, milk, milk, milk for sale. Other times he would say he's got a pot of yogurt on his head, and he would try to sell that. So Gadadhar Das is a very special, intimate associate of Mahaprabhu and Nityananda. And then Srinivasacharya, just like Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, were empowered to write so many books. Srinivasacharya, the next generation, was empowered to distribute the books. Most of you know the famous story about how Jiva Goswami sent the famous trio, Srinivasacharya, Shyamananda, and Narottam Das Thakur, sent them with a cartload of shastras to go throughout Bengal, especially East Bengal, and firmly establish the bhakti movement there on Shastra. And so, on the order of Jiva Goswami, they did that. They took this cart loaded with Shastras, the works of the Goswamis. But when they got to a certain town, there was a king, not a certain town, but a certain region, predominated by a king. And the king was a crook, although he's chief executive. And he had teams of criminals who would rob people on the highways. And so his team saw this cart. And meanwhile, the king had been notified by his astrologers that in the cart were valuable treasures. They were the most valuable treasures, but they weren't jewels. But the king's astrologers, they thought they had it all figured out. There are treasures in that cart. So the king's dacoits, his criminals, in the night took away the cart containing all these shastras from the Goswamis. So the three of them, Shyamananda, Srinivas, and Narottam, were just devastated. But Srinivas actually managed to meet the king and make the king into a Vaishnava, upon which the king confessed, I have these books. Have they anything to do with you? And Srinivas, of course, was overjoyed. And so the three, Narottam, Shyamananda, and Srinivas, got the books back. And the king became a staunch Vaishnava. And throughout his region, he made sure everyone chanted their rounds. Someone would say, well, this is sectarian. But it's the way it was when he lived in this king's land. So Srinivasacharya is famous for his distributing. He's the original book distributor. Another story about Gadadhar Das. He was in his town, and there was a qazi, not the same qazi, this is a different town, but just the local Muslim ruler. And so Gadadhar Das, in full ecstatic trance, just marched into the qazi's home, chanting Hare Krishna. Can you imagine, you march into some, uninvited, right in the midst of some government, into the prime minister's home, and you're chanting Hare Krishna. And of course, the Muslim qazi couldn't put on any kind of veneer of, being non-sectarian and equal to all. No, what is this? He was enraged. Someone walks right into the middle of your house, uninvited, opens the door, walks in, full blazing kirtan. So the John Ghazi, this particular John Ghazi, all you have to do is chant the holy name of Hari. Everyone is chanting except you. Chaitanya and Nitai have made everyone chant the holy name except you. The Qazi looked at him and said, he was a politician, so he gave a perfect political answer. I will chant tomorrow the name of Hari. Gadadhar Das jumped into the sky. You've chanted! You've chanted! And because of the potency of Gadadhar Das, from that moment on, the king, the Qazi rather, actually became a staunch devotee. Because of the effect of Gadadhar Das, who somehow or other enabled the king, the Qazi, to chant without offense, even though he just said, I will certainly chant tomorrow the name Hari. Diplomatic answer. He had no intention of doing it. So that's his Gadadhar Das. And then there's a disappearance day of another associate of Mahaprabhu. We don't have too much information about Dhananjaya Pandit. So here we are talking about what is apparently doom, the disappearance, the end of the body of these greatest souls. But at the same time, we know that their glories are spiritual. And therefore, we derive real spiritual contentment by hearing about their activities even on the day of their disappearance. All right, any questions? Yes?
Krishna's system is to associate with devotees so that we can get to know him, right? So what's the best way to please and to serve pure devotees?
Pure devotee is someone who takes the mission of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as their life and soul. So you take that as your life and soul, and you become dear to the parampara. As you were explaining last night, without an opportunity to serve Nityananda Chaitanya, we just remain kanistadhikaris, third-class materialistic devotees, prakrita bhaktas. By serving the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu, we actually make spiritual advancement and we can actually understand Krishna. Otherwise, Krishna is difficult to understand. Without serving Chaitanya Nitai, we'll just be ritualistic devotees. Come to the temple once a week, offer pranams to the deities, put a few coins in the hundi, and then disappear. But by engaging in missionary activities, you're forced to nourish your own bhakti, because you have to have something to give. So whatever ashram you're in, and each ashram has its different styles, somehow or other be connected to the outreach work of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu. Then understanding Krishna and pleasing Krishna is much easier. Otherwise, Krishna is difficult to please. And as Krishna says at the end of the Gita, Natatasman manusheshu kastyame priyakritama, there's no one more dear, nor will there ever be one more dear than the one who distributes his glories, teaches his glories. So this is the quick way to be recognized by Krishna. So we all have to deal with that express way of being recognized by Krishna. We have to deal with it according to the style of our ashram, but still we have to deal with it. Otherwise, we remain third-class devotees, trapped in the bodily conception while believing in Krishna. Anything else? Yes? Louder, please.
Recently in the elections, they were asking people to vote on whether there should be assisted dying.
Can't hear at all, I'm sorry. The acoustics here are not the greatest, so can you belt it out? Assertive.
In the recent elections,
Oh, where?
in here in New Zealand, they were asking citizens to vote on assisted dying, and I was just wondering if you wanted to speak.
On euthanasia, assisted dying, is there a difference between euthanasia and assisted dying? Or euthanasia is the fancy word, and people prefer assisted dying. It sounds better. You're giving assistance and care for someone. You're a caregiver. So what is your question?
Well, you were talking about how people are very attached to these bodies and they don't want to leave them.
Uh-huh.
And so much pain for them when they're actually leaving their body even though we can't see it.
Yes?
So I was just interested to know from what your perspective would be on the assisted dying process, because sometimes people are in so much pain they would rather have assistance to live.
So she's asking, what is the bhakti vision of assisted dying? Because people sometimes are in so much pain that they don't want to go on. Is that it? You think you're doing them a favor by helping them end their life. You don't see the pain that they'll go through that's even worse. Because they don't know any. They say, oh, I can't take the pain any longer. Give me some pills to take that will end it all. But they don't know that there's worse pain coming from that. Because with mundane vision, you can't see what the conditioned soul is going through at the time of giving up the body. You don't see that. You just see them. But you have no idea what it's like on the inside. So you've actually made it worse for them. It's like someone who wants to get out of prison and they do a prison escape. They jump out through the window or something. Somehow they dig a tunnel, they get out of prison. But when they're caught, it's even worse for them because they didn't get out the right way. They didn't end the process of samsara. They actually made it worse. So if they really, just like for devotees, like Pritchett knew his end is coming. Did he end his life prematurely? No, he stopped eating, he stopped drinking. That's generally what devotees will do. Why maintain this body? It's obvious it's over. So I just stop eating and drinking and leave this body aside. That's the authorized way. Not that you ask someone to finish you off. So yes, when it's clear the body is useless and finished, the Vaishnava doesn't maintain it anymore. Just like you have a totally junked car. You don't take it to the mechanic anymore to fix it up. So that's the proper way. You're not prematurely ending your life. You're simply not maintaining a wreck. Why waste Krishna's energy, Krishna's sustenance on a body that's finished? That's depending on Krishna. That's what Pritchett Maharaj did. Shukadeva Goswami was concerned. You're not eating, you're not even drinking water. Should I stop my narration of the Krishna Katha? And Pritchett Maharaj said, no, don't do that. Once before, I got thirsty, and look what happened. I got cursed to die in 7 days. So don't stop the Krishna Katha because of my thirst. Especially since my thirst is actually quenched by hearing the Hari Katamrita. The nectar talks about Krishna. That's what I'm really thirsty for. And Shukadeva Goswami was so happy to hear that. You'll see this in the beginning of the 10th canto. So finally, so much of our problems in understanding the final doom, death, is because we don't see what the conditioned soul is undergoing. We just see the outside. We just see the body. You don't see the subtle body. You don't see the Yamadutas in operation. Sometimes I've heard from nurses that they do see their patients yelling and screaming at the last moments. Get them out of here! Get them out of here! No, get them away! It's horrible. But ordinarily you don't see them with your ordinary vision. In conclusion, we should be happily taking up the process of bhakti, and that will take care of the doomsday. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare